What's up everybody, we're back with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at Maut on Mythic difficulty. I'll be going over most of the mechanics, how to deal with them, and our overall tactic for this fight. So for this encounter you want 2 to 3 tanks, 5 healers, and 12 to 13 DPS. I've read that some guilds are using 3 tanks for this encounter to make it a bit more safe. We went with 2 tanks, but I will cover both of these approaches. With that said, let's check out what's new on Mythic. So there's only one new mechanic to deal with, and it's the Ancient Curse, a raid-wide curse that reduces your movement speed by 15%, and after 24 seconds you die, like this dumb tank right here. If, or rather when you remove the curse, it deals around 34k raid-wide damage, so if you remove all at the same time it's gonna hurt. You can remove this simply by dipping into a Devoured Abyss zone. So the easiest way to deal with this is simply to have each raid group remove their curse with a few seconds in between, so healers can top you off before the next one. For example, raid group 1 clears curse instantly upon application, second group after a few seconds, etc, etc. Other than that, the fight plays roughly the same as heroic, just harder tuned. With that said, let's jump into the fight. On pull, tank the boss where he spawns, have all melee on one side of him and range on the opposite side. It is extremely important that no ranged players be within 15 yards of Maut due to the Blackwing ability, which always targets players in melee. And the reason you do this is so melee gets all the wins so that range don't have to be knocked around. And if you're playing Echoing Void, get a weak aura for its range. You can max range echoing so it still hits but you don't get targeted by wings, or just play another corruption on this boss. Anyways, for the Devoured Abyss zones, make sure to drop one off near melee that tanks and melee can use for the curse and annihilation. Rest of the zones should be placed a bit away behind melee camp if you're melee, behind range if you're range. When the boss casts Stygian Annihilation, make sure to go into the zones at least 1 sec before it goes off. If you go in any later than that, the zone might not tick in time and you won't actually be immune when Annihilation goes off. So no min-maxing. Now, if you plan to 2-tank this, you will be doing 2 sets of Dark Manifestation adds before you trigger phase 2. For this, you will have 1 tank deal with the boss for all of phase 1 except the very first 1 or 2 Shadow Claws, which is the tank dot. So on pull, your add tank starts on the boss, and after either 1 or 2 stacks of the dot, the boss tank taunts off and add tank is on add duty for the rest of phase 1. The first add spawns like 2 seconds before the second Shadow Claw hits, so if it spawns really far away or like right behind range, swap on 1 stack so you can get there before it kills someone, otherwise swap on the second stack. As soon as the first add spawns, pull it to the range group and all range DPS swap to it until it starts casting Dark Offering. Silence the mob with a voidy zone, then get it out and range can start all over again. Do this until the second add spawns, then you can have your boss tank taunt that add into the boss for him to eat it. Our add was around 3 million health when this happened, so it really didn't make a large dent into the boss mana. And for the second add, just keep it in one of the zones, then drag it into the boss right before the third add is about to spawn. Doing so will give the boss enough mana to start phase 2 so you don't get the third add. So the mana on the second add doesn't matter one bit since the boss transitions to phase 2 as soon as it eats it. One thing to keep in mind with this strat is that the boss tank will end up around 5-6 stacks of Shadow Claw, which takes really hard. So plan your cooldowns accordingly, and healers, don't be afraid to spam heal the tank a bit since you get your mana back in phase 2, at least a bit of it. However, if you want to free tank it instead, here's what you do. You will use 2 tanks for the boss to manage the Shadow Claw debuff and 1 primarily for the adds. You want to drop 1 Devoured zone in a pre-assigned location that the add tank can use, and the add tank will simply keep all of the adds on him and in the void zones for most of phase 1. Assign a few physical damage dealers to add number 1 and 2 to ensure that the first add dies before phase 2 starts. The third add you simply let the boss eat when he's about 90% mana, and following this you drag out the second add out of the zone and let it cast 1 Dark Offering to trigger phase 2, then simply drag the second add onto the boss to get cleaved down with the boss during phase 2. And with that said, let's take a look at phase 2. Goal here is still to break the shield before Obsidian Shatter goes off. The only thing to really keep in mind here is don't kill yourself by hitting your buttons too hard. Use boost defensive cooldowns along with your actual DPS cooldowns, and assign externals for extra bursty boys. I know we used pain suppression on our fire mage for his combustion, so just get creative, and again, don't kill yourself. Tanks, make sure to run out and grab the orbs of mana. You don't have to run like madmen for them, they don't deal a lot of damage even if you run into them right next to the boss. Of course, if you notice that the rate is very low, then try and grab it sooner rather than later. Make sure you run out a bit with drain mana and dispel them as soon as they're at least 8 yards away. However, if your healers are very fine with mana, you kinda don't need to run out with it, you can just insta-dispel it, but the safe bet is to run out 8 yards. And following this, it is literally rinse repeat. If you're 2 tanking, then add tank starts on boss again when phase 1 repeats. And like before, you swap on 1 to 2 stacks of the Shadow Claw. Other than that, healers, make sure to have a CD rotation for all of phase 2. Things like Link, Barrier, Devo is very good for this. You might need some healing CDs during phase 1 to cover the Ancient Curse Burst, but honestly phase 1 is not that healing intense except the tank if you're 2 tanking. We use Lust on Pull, but it is probably better to use it post 30%. And with that said, if you have any questions, make sure to hit me up on Facebook or become a Patreon. As a Patreon, you will get access to my Discord where you find all of our healing notes, weak auras, and it's the fastest way to get a hold of me if you need any help during progression. And there's also a bunch of lovely Patreons in the Discord helping each other out during progression with tips and tricks, so make sure to check that out. And as always, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, and ring that notification bell. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.